Thank you very much, Jill. Hello, everybody. First of all, thanks for being such a great audience, and thanks again to the panelists for providing such wonderful advice along the way. Couple things. Everybody, when they walked in, received a survey. If you can take the time and fill that out for us, that's really helpful because that helps us out for next year as we go through planning. And really, without further ado, I'd like to bring up Nick from CNN. We have to, one thing we're going to have to do is make sure his AV equipment is up and running. So we're going to take a quick break of like maybe 3-4 minutes. We actually have some food over there that has just been sitting over there. So if you guys can go over there, grab something, and then Nick will be able to put his AV together and we'll be ready to go. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, perfect.
Mike, okay. Hi, everybody. I have to skedaddle out of here, but I just wanted to talk to any students, freshmen, sophomore, junior, grad student. If you are looking, I know Amy said in her department at WGN they're not hiring for interns. We aren't at the moment, but we do look for summer associates. So if you're looking for a place to get experience in the sales or marketing and promotions department, you can take down my email address. And if you have any questions or want to connect with another kind of professional, I am more than willing to help. I always love talking to Loyola students, and I always connect people in the way that they need to be. So my email address, if anybody wants to take it down, it's the first letter of my name, J, E as in elephant, X as in X-ray, P as in Paul, O, S, E, at WGNradio.com. Again, it's J-Expose, J-E-X-P-O-S-E, at WGNradio.com. And if you're bold and just want to take my number, 219-682-7821. You can leave a voicemail or send me a text. I'm not that conservative. 219-682-7821. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
So I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to black it. Here we go. And then I'm totally going to make comments on all this. So I'm just going to tweak my presentation a little bit. I tell you what, is there any way to have that mic instead? Because I'm definitely not a stay in one place.
Check.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, if you want to. I can give you this mic. Just keep
Okay, everybody, well, looks like we're ready to go. Nick Levan from CNN Turner Broadcasting is here to give us an overview about their opportunities. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Nick.
Hi, I kind of wish I was over there eating the food right now. So. Maybe turned off? I don't know. It's good. Sweet. No, I'll grab a cookie and come over. I'm good. So first off, I don't always dress like this. I know we talked about dress code and things like that earlier. I am one of those characters, so sometimes I dress like Superfly, and this is just one of those days. So I felt like it was important that I did that. My name's Nick. I represent CNN and Turner, so my expertise, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I got involved with this in a minute. My expertise is more on the CNN side, but I've been with Turner since 2004, so quite a ways back. And when I was in school, I graduated from the University of Georgia with a theater degree. And all I wanted to do was voiceover work for Cartoon Network. The people that I went to school with, that 2 years ahead of me, all of my friends created, if you know these shows, C-Lab 2021 and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. They literally wrote the shows. They did all the ridiculous work that goes along with putting those shows together. So I said, okay, when I graduate, I'll just go and hit them up for a job, and I'll, of course, be the next Meatwad or whatever ridiculous character comes out. Well, the problem is, I didn't really do my homework when it comes to that. And that's, if you take nothing else from what I'm going to talk about today, it's do your homework on how to do what you want to do first, and specifically, if you want to work for a company, especially something like Turner that has all these different companies kind of intertwined into it, know a lot about those companies before you even attempt to get a job with them, because it's going to be very, very important going forward. But when I graduated, I knew enough about Turner that they'd like to hire from within. So I figured, okay, I know you can't just waltz in the door and do voiceover work. That's not how it works. But I figured if I could just do something that gets me talking to people, cool. So CNN, if you've ever been down to Atlanta, which, by the way, it's like 72 degrees at my house right now, which is crazy. That's warm even for this time, or even for Atlanta for this time. So just, I walked down here and kind of shriveled up a little bit. But I'm from Iowa originally, and I lived in upstate New York, and I lived across the lake in Muskegon, Michigan. So I'm not a stranger to that. But I was one of those sad, sorry people stuck on the interstate for 18 hours at snowpocalypse. You know when the whole country made fun of Atlanta for some flurries? That. Anyway, getting back to the point at hand, I was a tour guide for CNN. So imagine, if you know anything about the NBC Page program in New York, it's very similar to that without quite as many of the production responsibilities. In other words, you don't have to be a journalist necessarily to do those jobs. I knew that I could talk to people, I knew I could look people in the eye, and I figured as long as I can get in the door somewhere in Turner, I can mosey my way over to the voiceover work. So I did that. Meanwhile, my fiance was a year behind me, finishing up her student teaching degree. This is very, very important. She had just signed a contract for a special scholarship that pays off your last 2 years of school. Amazing scholarship, but you have to teach in the state of Georgia for 5 years after you get that scholarship, after you graduate. This is going to come back into play right now. When I got into Turner, that's when I realized that Turner, just like everybody else, all of their voiceover work is done in Burbank, California, which is a long, long way away from Atlanta, Georgia. So I had to completely rethink what I was going to do almost overnight. And I handled it completely the wrong way. I got really, really jaded, really, really angry, and became a terrible employee, a really bad employee, to the point where I was late all the time. I was just grumpy. I'd walk in the door lethargic, and it almost cost me my job. It almost cost me an opportunity to work through that. And when I realized that I was skating on very, very thin ice, that's when I figured, hey, maybe it's too late to salvage this, but let me see what I can do. So I went into my managers at the time and said, what do you have on your plate that you hate that I could take over? I want to do something. I want to help in any way that I can. What do you got? So they gave me something that they hated, and I took over it, and I transformed it. That gave me some opportunities to expand my way through this tours division. Well, long story short, I became a manager with tours a couple years down the road. I became the guy who handled all of the VIP and dignitary clients for the CNN Center. So I went from really bad employee giving tours for CNN, a public tour that 8th graders were taking as part of their Georgia history class, to interviewing and bringing in Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. I met everybody from him to Tommy Lee to The Rock to just about anybody you can imagine. I was setting up the walkthroughs for Secret Service agents. I was taking people around and introducing them to the CEO of Turner, the president of CNN, all of these people I had to be on a first name basis with. So it really transformed how I had to be almost overnight. And I was sitting back there taking notes the entire time they were talking, and they have some really, really huge points that they made that I want to sort of intertwine through what I'm going to talk about today. But I do want to talk about a couple of the opportunities I'm here for. Listening to me is a lot like taking a drink out of a fire hose. I'm just going to blast a lot of information at you. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of depth in the beginning because you can look at slides. I'd rather answer your questions if you have any at the end, and then I'll kind of throw some chunks and nuggets of stuff in there that I got from the talk at the same time. So, a little bit about Turner. If you didn't know what Turner was, you get out of the Southeast, and a lot of people have no idea that all of this is Turner. So yes, it is TBS and TNT and Cartoon Network, but it's also CNN and all of CNN subsidiaries. It's also NBA TV. It's also things like Adult Swim and weird things like Ice Cream Planet, Super Deluxe, and Great Big Story. So all these things are Turner in general. We have internships and full-time entry-level positions in just about every single one of those companies that you see up there. It just depends on where you're willing to start your career. Now, I will say, the only bad news that I have for you is there is one internship in Chicago, just one, and it's ad sales. Everything else, you got to be a little bit adventurous and either go to Atlanta, New York, DC, or Los Angeles for the most part, unless you really like sports, and then you can go to San Francisco too. So let's get through here. I want to give you a quick little timeline on the company. This is a lot of information, but this was sort of my thing. My thing was talking about the company in general. So Turner Broadcasting was launched back in 1976. And does anybody know, first off, who the founder of Turner was? Ted Turner. Okay. Craziest person I've ever met. Weirdest individual, hands down. Does anybody know where his family got the initial fortune? Way before this, way before television. Right? Billboards. So his father created a company called Turner Outdoor Advertising, and he really pioneered the billboard boom on Route 66. And so they made lots and lots of money on billboard advertising. That was his big thing. Now, when his father passed away, Ted inherited the entire company. Now you have to picture this. Ted had 6 months prior to this gotten expelled from Brown for having a girl in his dorm room. It's very scandalous. But it didn't help that he was on suspension for rolling a bowling ball down the faculty parking lot and hitting the dean of admissions' car. That got him there in the first place. But again, Ted, character, weird guy. He's no longer the head of the company. We're now part of Time Warner Communications. But we launched TBS, or Turner Broadcasting System, in 1976 when we purchased a little tiny UHF television station in downtown Atlanta because Ted wanted to try out this television thing. And it was called WTCG, which stood for Watch This Channel Grow. And they did all kinds of weird things. They just wanted to see how many eyeballs that they could get on their stuff. So anything from just strange kids shows during the day to in the news programs they had at night, they had people standing on the tables throwing hard copy up in the air just to see what they could do. And they changed their MO a couple years down the road, and they changed it to WTBS. And they used that as the pilot station for what they called the TBS Superstation. Now, why is it called the Superstation? Because it was the first network ever to launch the same exact signal for television on the East Coast and the West Coast at the same time. Now, that sounds completely ludicrous today because you can do that with your laptop and a good broadband connection. But back then, everything was regionally based, everything. So Northeast, Southeast, West, Midwest, it was all cut up. So TBS did that. WGN did it the exact same year after that, which is why when I was growing up, no matter where you went in the country, you could always watch the Atlanta Braves or the Chicago Cubs every day, anywhere in the country. But he made a lot of money really quickly on TBS doing three things that other people weren't doing up until that point. The first is he only bought syndicated television shows. So shows that were already in reruns, and he specifically bought shows that he wanted to see. That's it, shows that he liked. But they also had to be in black and white. That was his little disclaimer. The reason they had to be in black and white is so when he went to the ad agencies, he pitched it and said, your commercials will look twice as vibrant on our network because our shows are in black and white and they're going to stick out. So immediately the ad agency started throwing money at him left and right. Well, the other thing that was a little bit weird that Ted did is Ted hated commercials. Hated commercials. He needed commercials, but he hated them. And specifically, he hated flipping through channels at the top and bottom of the hour. So he figured, let's change that. He took the entire network and shifted it by 5 minutes. So most of you probably can't remember this, but TBS used to literally run at like 8:05 or 10:15 a show would run. And they specifically made it so they would never show a commercial at the top and bottom of the hour. So you'd be flipping through the channels, and you see this old show like the Andy Griffith Show, and all of a sudden you say, oh, I love this show. Okay, that's fine. There's nothing else on, and you start watching. Before you figured out what was going on, you'd already missed the first 10 minutes of the next show that you were intending to watch. So he got you hooked on a completely different cycle of shows. And that allowed him to slip an extra commercial break in a strange part of the hour. So a lot of money really quickly, which he squirreled away and used to launch his pet project, which was CNN. So the cable news network was launched June 1st, 1980 to 1.7 million households from this old converted country club in downtown Atlanta called the Progressive Club. We just bought it, moved a bunch of stuff into the basement, started running CNN. All right, it's grown considerably since that time. But from CNN, we then launched Headline News 2 years later. CNN Headline News was a much faster version of it, more concise. It repeated about every 30 minutes or so with news. That changed to HLN, and today it's more of a social media and trending network. All right, we started branching out into the international, the European markets in 1985, CNN International. And then in 1987, Ted bought MGM, the whole thing. He one day just said, I want to buy MGM. And he sold it the very next day. So he owned it for exactly 24 hours. But the reason he bought MGM is so he could get the rights to Gone with the Wind, his favorite show, his favorite movie of all time. He's a crazy fan of Gone with the Wind to the point where he kept all of the costumes from Gone with the Wind when he bought MGM, and he named his first son Rhett, as in Rhett Butler. He's a cool guy, but again, strange family. But he used Gone with the Wind, 24 hours of Gone with the Wind, to launch both TNT and Turner Classic Movies. The only thing that he kept from MGM was the MGM Film Vault, which at the time also included RKO, so you had Citizen Kane, a lot of really great movies from the 30s. You also had Hanna-Barbera, which gave you classic cartoons, which he would then use to launch both Cartoon Network and Boomerang later on down the road. So that was a crazy boom for us. And then right about the beginning of 2000, there was a guy who wanted to leave Cartoon Network. And they asked him, what would it take to make you stay? He said, well, I need this ridiculous amount of money, and I want my own network, no questions asked. I said, well, we can't really do that 100%, but we can tack it on to Cartoon Network and see what happens. And thus, Adult Swim was born. So Adult Swim is not, if you go to adultswim.com, you can't get to cartoonnetwork.com. If you go to cartoonnetwork.com, you can't get to adultswim.com because it's not children's television. I have so many people, and when we get into the recruiting part of it in just a minute, I promise we're almost there. I have a lot of people come up to me and say, oh, I love cartoons. I want to work for Adult Swim. I want to do an internship with Adult Swim. It's fantastic. Do you fit any of the qualifications? So that's really, really important. When they were talking about the resumes and things, there's a couple things that I'm going to add to that really, really are important when you talk about journalism positions and things like design or PR or little things like that for massive companies that you really, really have to know. Anyway, long story short, we went through a lot of different changes. We started branching off, getting a lot of sports entities and Latin American entities in the mid-2000s. NBA TV, that brought us that partnership with Shaq and Charles, so now they do the NBA on TNT. So they hang out in our sort of basement area underneath our buildings and play basketball all day long. But last year, which is really difficult to see, right down here, we launched a couple of really strange entities. The first was E-League. Now, E-League is online competitive video gaming. Who knew that that was a multi-hundred billion dollar industry? We didn't know that until we figured it out one day and realized that nobody was doing that in the US at all, especially on a network scale. So we hosted our first E-League tournament last year. It was sold out in 5 minutes. It was like a rock star competition. So a massive arena in downtown Atlanta, and the winners took home $1.2 million worth of a pot. So it was a very, very successful venture. Lots of things going on with the E-League right now. The second one, though, is Filmstruck. Filmstruck is, think Netflix just for Turner Classic Movies. So it's just a streaming site that allows you full control of anything in that film vault that we were talking about before. So that's a quick synopsis of the timeline there. When we get into where we're located, we are predominantly based in the US, although we've got Latin American markets as well, South American markets, Asian markets. And so our primary location is Atlanta. That's where most of your divisions, I guess, for Turner and the entertainment side are located. And then for CNN, we have the CNN Center, which is by far our largest building. After that, you've got New York. We're in the Time Warner Center, right at Columbus Circle. We're about to move to Hudson Yards in a couple of years when they finish that facility. That's our second largest facility. That's mostly CNN, but you also have things like True TV there. And a couple of more of our research divisions are based up in New York. DC is all CNN. It is all CNN. It's all CNN politics. It's the bread and butter of DC. It's what we do. LA is a little bit of everything. You've got Cartoon Network Studios in Burbank. You've got some of Adult Swim. You've got the Voice division, like I talked about. You also have CNN Entertainment division, so small, right in the Sunset Strip. Up in Sunset Boulevard, sorry. When you get up into San Francisco, that's Bleacher Report. So it's this tiny, tiny little building. And you literally, it's like walking into an apartment. You have to get past the lady who's sitting there, playing bingo in the front door. And you can either go up to your apartment or you can go up to Bleacher Report. But if you want to go up to Bleacher Report, then you have to sign in. It's one of those things, downtown San Francisco. These are the numbers from, I guess, the end of 2015. We're about to get the ones from the end of 2016. The only differences that I would guess you're going to see going forward is a difference between the millennials and Gen Xers. I would flip those two numbers, and you'll have about what the numbers are going into 2017. So internships, like I said, here's where I'm going to blast through a lot of information because I want to get to some questions and I want to bring in some important points. These are incredibly hands-on internships. You will get paid. They pay minimum wage based on location, so they're not going to pay you a whole lot, but you're going to get a lot of experience, a lot of experience. We also hire about 60% of our interns. That sounds like it could be a high number or a low number depending on your perception of that, but if we hire you as an intern, that means we want you as a full-time employee, period. So we look for a lot of things which we'll talk about. We have spring, fall, and summer. Right now, our spring interns started yesterday. So I did orientation with our Atlanta team yesterday. New York did theirs. We did them all over the place. We had 6 or 7 different orientations going on. And then I finished up what I needed to do, went home, flew out, came here this morning. We do a lot of different program events. We do everything from speaker series to lunch and learns, weekly lunch and learns. We do film festivals where the interns create the films. We bring in a panel of judges. We include those in social media campaigns. We work through that. We have, in the fall, we do things like a big tailgate, or we've got a basketball tournament where we hang out down on the basketball court and inside the NBA studio. All these things, we try and get engaged as much as we can. We take them, we had the summer interns last year. we took them for an outing to watch a couple of those competitions for E-League if they wanted to join that. We had a field day with the Cartoon Network group where we basically just went out to Piedmont Park with 400 other, Piedmont Park would be like our Central Park down in Atlanta, and we had massive day of field games and popsicles and fun, because that's what it is. It's fun. But we also do this program that is called Focus on Careers, which effectively is an intensive program that should be called How to Get a Job with Turner. We effectively want to teach you how to translate these internships into full-time opportunities and give you the best way to do that from a networking perspective, from a shadowing, what are your next steps, and to give you some ideas as to what's available out there. It's 10 to 12 weeks, depending on your availability. The only reason it's 10 to 12 weeks standard is that's what most schools require for that credit hours. You can work more if you're available to work more. All right, so you have to be either a rising junior up to 6 months post-grad to be eligible for our program. There are some exceptions. There are always some exceptions. If you are a freshman or a rising sophomore and you want to apply for these positions, if you're a rock star, it doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a sophomore. I'm still going to find you. There's no way, if you have the qualifications that we're looking for, that I will not see you. And if your resume and your personality beats all of the other people, then you're in. So don't take that as it's absolutely a hard and fast rule that you cannot be part of our program if you're not old enough. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to really bring your A game. One of the things that I wanted to comment on from a recruiting perspective that the panel touched on, when you get into some of these companies, or you're trying to get into some of these companies, this is incredibly high volume recruiting. That's one of those buzzwords. But for our summer program in Atlanta only, I will receive 15,000 unique applicants. That's not 15,000 times somebody applied. That is 15,000 different people applied for something that had the word intern just in Atlanta, just for summer. Of those, between the Turner and the CNN positions in Atlanta, there's probably 200 to 250 positions. Those are the odds. So in order to get past that black hole that everybody talks about, when you're looking at your resume, you need to know what the word Boolean means. If you don't, Google it, Boolean. Just know that while you're Googling it, you're doing a Boolean search. Boolean is a fancy keyword search that allows us to check through these resumes. I will never read 15,000 resumes. I don't have the power in my body to do it. However, I will read probably 100 resumes per position, depending on how many I have. I have to get it narrowed down to 100 though, and sometimes I start with 800 to 1,000 applicants per position. So I have to figure out a way to do that. So look at these job descriptions. Yes, some of them in the past have sucked. You're going to see some of these companies do list duties. Ours are more like, tell us your story. Here's what we're all about. So it'll be intertwined and woven a little bit more eloquently than here's the duties you need to have. But you need to look through these job descriptions and you need to find some of those characteristics that they're looking for, some of those tasks that they want you to have completed. If you have 90% of those, there's no way on this earth that I will not see your resume, plain and simple. But I really do urge you to look up what Boolean is and how these searches are strung together, because that is really the key to getting past that black hole that everybody talks about. I've never been to a school where I have not heard, I feel like when I apply to these jobs, it's a black hole. No one ever sees my resume. I hear you. Sometimes it is. Sometimes we won't see your resume. But you have to be smart about it. So what that means is don't click all and apply to all. All right? You also need to be strategic with what you're applying to. If you're applying to work on a production team for CNN, you may not be qualified to be a designer for Adult Swim Maybe you are. Maybe you have a portfolio that's in play and all this production experience. Maybe you do. But be really careful not to apply for 20 different things that are nothing like the other ones. Try and do it in the same wheelhouse. So be smart about it. It's fine. It's perfectly acceptable to apply for 5, 6 positions that are similar to itself. But with our company, with Turner, and this is Time Warner wide, so throw HBO and Warner Brothers into that mix as well with Turner. We use an applicant tracking system, just like any other company. This is the boring side of recruiting, unfortunately. But once you have applied for 100 positions ever, it puts a little exclamation point next to your name. Now that doesn't mean stay away from this person. All it means is we can never see what you've applied to without individually keying in every job code that is down there. It just gives us a bunch of numbers. Now, as a recruiter, for an internship or an entry-level position, I'm not going to hand key a bunch of positions to see what you've applied for. It will probably prevent you from being considered for one of these positions. So I want this to be as transparent as possible, and it sounds mean up front. We're going to get to the fun stuff now, but that's how you get past that black hole. You have to think of the job description as have your resume sort of read like a book on that job description first, and then your personality is going to sell it. Because how do we interview? For first round interviews, we're going to do a video interview with you. In other words, you're either going to see me or one of my colleagues talking to you through the video, recorded video, asking you questions. You're then going to record yourself answering those questions right back. And I'm going to watch that video, all of them, every question, every time. That gives me, and these are not like, tell me about yourself. These will be specific questions, especially when you get into some of these Turner entities like Adult Swim. They're going to ask you, what is your favorite Adult Swim original? If you say Archer, you lose. So they're looking for personality, because I'm then going to turn around and give these videos to those hiring managers so they can see you. They can see how you present yourself, how you act on that. Just because you don't look at the camera is not going to be a deal breaker. But look, when we were talking about dress code and things like that a couple minutes ago, I had to laugh because we did one of these interviews for an Adult Swim marketing position. And this guy who interviewed for it, he was in his dorm room, which I would urge you not to do that because it's really distracting having everything behind you. But he did it. He was wearing a SpongeBob t-shirt. It was kind of awesome. He answered all of these questions so perfectly. It was like we dialed up the perfect intern candidate and put it there. At the very end, there was some question that we said, like, is there anything else you want to add? Any questions you have for us? And he said some long statement, and he said, and I just wanted to tell you that I haven't been wearing pants this entire time. Of course he got the job. He would not have gotten the job if he wanted to get the job with CNN, but of course he got the job with Adult Swim, and he's gone on to he's a senior producer with Adult Swim now. 3 years later, he's gone through 2 other jobs. So just because you don't wear pants in your interview doesn't mean you're not going to get the job, but just be smart and know what the department is. CNN's very different from Adult Swim. I tried to get a job with Adult Swim one time, and I asked people, what should I wear to the interview? And my boss gave me the worst advice I've ever gotten to this day. He said, Nick, this is a coordinator level job. You have to wear a suit. I said, but it's Adult Swim. They don't do suits. He said, doesn't matter. It's an interview. You'll never have to wear a suit again, but wear a suit to the interview. So I walked in to William Street, which is the building that if you're ever in Atlanta, you can't miss it. There's a giant gold owl on the roof. And there's lots of neon signs in the window. In fact, if you ever watch something that's on Adult Swim, at the very end of it, you'll see this black and white photo and hear an anvil being hit. Well, that is a picture of Adult Swim. So I walked in that building, and the receptionist, who was about that tall, had purple hair, and looked like she fell face first into a tackle box. She was awesome. She asked me, said, are you here for the audit? I said, no, I'm here to interview for this job. She kind of went, have a seat. Well, the person who walked out to interview me was a vice president. He walked out wearing a Chewbacca t-shirt and cut-off jeans and flip-flops. 15 minutes later, I walked out of that building, and I still haven't heard back from that. It's been about 9 years. So I'm pretty sure I didn't get that job. The point is, if you know, the more you know about the company that you want to work with, the better. Just like they said in that panel earlier. All right, so that's literally all I'm going to talk about, internships. We're going to come back to that. There's hundreds and hundreds of internships. We'll answer any questions you have. When you talk about entry-level opportunities, there is a CNN side and there's a Turner side. So for the CNN side first, I am the recruiter for all of these entry-level positions, whether they're in New York or DC or Atlanta. These are my positions as well. So there's a little bit different. The main difference, I guess, between the entry-level positions and the internships is, one, you're going to get paid a whole lot more. Two, you have to be graduated. Three, you're going to do a lot more work. You're going to do a lot of work as an intern, but you're going to do a lot more work as a full-time employee. So the news assistant program, there's two assistant positions. There's a news assistant, which is more of the editorial side, and there's a technical operations assistant, which is more of the studio production side. So news assistant, you're going to do things like you're going to run the prompter. Now, a lot of people say, well, I ran prompter for my school news, and why should I be excited about running prompter? Because you're the only one running prompter, and 190 million people are watching it. Good luck. So prompter is part of it. You're going to learn that part, but you're also part of the editorial process. You're going to sit in on the editorial meetings. You're going to be asked to contribute. You're going to be doing package editing. You're going to be doing writing. You're going to be working with the digital team. All these units put into play. The tech ops is more of the behind the scenes. You're going to be doing grip, lights, camera, learning RoboCam, Jib, working in the control room. They want to figure out where you want to end up. So think about it this way. These positions are not positions you apply to if you want to be on the air. CNN is not where you start. It's kind of where you finish. But if you want to be an executive producer, run your own show, then news assistant is a perfect way to get into that. If you want to be a director and run the control room, or a technical director, the tech ops assistant is the way to go. Right? They're incredibly high volume, like we talked about before, but they're also not the only way to get into the company. There are AP positions as well. The difference between some of these AP and PA positions is you're going to do a lot more with the video side, unless it says the word digital with it. If it says the word digital, be prepared to write. In other words, you have to have writing samples, preferably published writing samples. Anytime you see the word digital, it's going to be really important. With the PA positions, they want you to have 1 year of experience. You can fudge that with really, really high-level internships. So if you have those coming into play, they'll kind of count those as 1 year of experience. But we're talking 4 to 5 internships at a high level. But you'll be supporting the entire domestic organization with that. So your schedule is going to change. You're going to be working with Wolf Blitzer's team one day, Anderson Cooper's team the other day, and then bounce around and work with some of the weekend shows the next week. So all these things change and is different based on what location you're in. Anytime New York is put in front of a position, they're going to want you to have at least 6 months postgraduate experience, just because they can. That's all. I've been fighting with New York for a long time on that. They will have the exact same job description, but they will have the letters NYC. If you want to work in New York for a CNN position, you've got to get some freelance experience first, preferably, or some full-time experience at a smaller agency or local news agency first. Now, when you get into the entertainment division, you get a little bit muddier in terms of what exact location you might be. And I don't mean location in terms of Atlanta or New York or DC or those, but I'm talking about what division of the company you're working with. The Turner Trainee Program, or the T3 program, it's not a program in the true sense that all of the positions are unified and they're all the same thing. The T3 is just a moniker that we put on certain positions, and these are your primary entry-level positions for the entertainment division. Most of them will be Atlanta-based, however, there will be one in New York, and there'll be a couple out in LA as well. There's typically about 20 to 30 of them. They get posted in the next 2 months. So I would look for them in late March, early April to be posted. These positions are, you have to be graduated to be eligible for these positions, but you have to be graduated from the time they start, and they start in July. So they post in March and April, they start in July. So as long as you graduated before July of that year, then you're eligible for the positions. You're going to cover every single one of those different divisions has a T3 of some kind. For CNN, it's more of a research side of T3, but most of your T3 positions will be in Cartoon Network. There's probably 18 out of 25 will be Cartoon Network based and be in either Atlanta or Burbank. This is an incredibly fast-paced, adapting position. So the program itself is 11 months. This is why we have to call it a program, because it is a true program in the sense that there's a start date and there's an end date. So it's full-time pay, which is very competitive, plus benefits. So you're going to get full-time benefits, which there are every benefit in the world. But it's going to end after 11 months with no guarantee that you're going to have a full-time job after that ends. I will tell you that 95% of those positions roll into full-time jobs afterwards, and some of them start prior to the end of that 11-month cycle. But in television, they love to weed people out. If you want to work in TV, at some point in time, you will probably get fired or have a show canceled or something will happen, and it's the people who adapt to that and move forward that stay working in television. So these jobs are designed to work really, really hard. That's why they pay very well. But they work you really, really hard, and if you don't quit, then you're probably going to have a really great job when you're done. All right? But it's no longer Atlanta campuses only, by the way. This is all the things that are encompassed in the T3 program. So they could be anything from brand development to digital games. Now, we literally have interns who are games QA interns. Their job is to get on Adult Swim games and try and break them all day long. They play video games all day long and try and break our video games. And that is what they do for their career as an intern, and some of them as a T3. They're very, very good at what they do, and they watch a lot of video games. But the point is, everything under the sun is involved in this program. So it's a very all-encompassing program. You have to be creative for this, but above all, you have to have industry knowledge. This is where that brand knowledge comes into play. They're looking for people who love these brands, who are passionate about these brands. You don't have to watch Cartoon Network all day long. You don't have to do all these. Half of you, I would say, let's do this. How many of you, by show of hands, you personally pay for it? It doesn't come as part of a package with your apartment or anything like that, but you pay every month for either cable or satellite. Raise your hand. Okay. All right, about 6 or 7. All right, how many of you subscribe to either Netflix, Hulu Plus, Amazon Prime, HBO Go, or any other streaming software? Exactly. That is why the entire industry is changing and will continue to change, which is why we're never going to run out of entry-level positions and internships, because all of these things are incredibly important. We need people who know how to use them going forward into these positions. But it also means that you need to figure out different ways and more creative ways to get brand and industry knowledge. Now, Studios Apprentice are specifically with Turner Studios. Now, these are Atlanta campuses only because that's where Turner Studios is located. We have 32 studios in Atlanta, ranging anywhere from a 20 by 20 box studio to a 150 by 150 large box studio. We'll run just about anything you can imagine there that is a Turner original, all the way to sometimes we lease them out to BET or other companies, movie shoots within Atlanta, because there's a lot of movies that are filmed in Atlanta. So we work really, really closely with this. But Studios Apprentice, it's a 2-year program. Now these are constantly adapting, which means they're going to give you more and more responsibilities about every 6 months. They're going to add on responsibilities, which means they're going to increase your pay every 6 months to go along with this. These are all but guaranteed to transition into full-time work afterwards. Again, there is no 100% guarantee, but we've only ever had 2 years worth of these positions. They are very new. There's a lot of them. There's 35 of these studio's apprentice positions. So if you like to work in a studio and you like that aspect of it, the filming side, the planning side, the behind the scenes side, these are the way to get into that industry, because you'll also get an opportunity to work with all of the production agencies within Atlanta, either on the film side or the television side as well, and there's a lot of them. If you like sports, NCAA Digital. So this is a post-grad. We're required through contractual agreements with NCAA to call it an internship. It's not an internship, but we have to call it an internship because they tell us to. The post-grad internship is a post-grad program for anybody from an NCAA institution, like Loyola. They are looking for people who love sports. Specifically, if you love basketball, this is the position for you, because we are going to run March Madness. Turner runs all of March Madness, which means every game there will be a team from Turner during March Madness. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of fun. And again, you've got to love sports to get into this. So the predominant sports that they're going to focus on are basketball and baseball. Has similar requirements to the T3 program. If you have experience in athletics, they're looking for you as well. If you are a former athlete, it helps because you know the positions well and you can talk to it a little bit better than most. But the point is, if you don't like sports, this is not the position. All you're going to do is sports. Lots and lots of sports. And you'll work very closely with Bleacher Report as well, Turner Sports, CNN Sports. It's all intertwined in there. But again, similar pay, similar programmatic elements to the T3 program. Now, those are some of our social pages. There are 3 recruiters for our entire internship program global. There's myself, Kyle Brock, who handles all of our entertainment and sports positions, and then there's Kiana Arnold, who handles our studios positions, our research positions, and our engineering positions. Together, we run all of those social media accounts. If you ever want to email us all at the same time, all you gotta do is put campus.recruiting@turner.com. We will answer any questions that you have. If you don't want to email us and you'd rather email us or contact us through social media, all of us answer those social media pages. I run the Facebook page, but I answer the Twitter and the Instagram page as well. Kyle runs the Instagram page, and Kiana runs the Twitter page because she used to work for Twitter, and that makes sense. Snapchat is more for when we do career day events. So if we're doing a career fair, we'll do a lot of snaps from that. Some of the traveling we'll do on Snapchat, or for intern events, we'll put those on Snapchat and put stories together for people to have. When we were talking about some of those things that they were explaining in the panel, when they're getting into tips and advice, networking, when she said network at the beginning, that's huge. But you have to network really strategically. You have to know who to talk to and who to reach out to, at least when you're in the company. Before you're in the company, network with everybody you can get in touch with at all times. Know your strengths, your passion, absolutely, and make sure it's on paper somewhere. It's great to have a good resume, but just like Amy was saying, it's also really, really important that you present yourself and be here and be a person rather than just a piece of paper or someone who can answer questions without putting a personality behind it. I would add, like I said at the beginning, be a character to that. You need to have your own personality, have your own character, whether it's wearing ridiculous red shoes and a red jacket or not wearing pants when you do an interview. These are all things that I would stress caution on some of those. But the point is, We want people who are individuals. And so do most companies like this. Most companies in the television industry are looking for the individuals to bring in what makes them great and help make the company even better. Let's see. You know what? Be a good person. That kind of struck me. The way I put it is, every single person, every one of you, turns the lights on wherever you go. Some of you turn the light on when you come in. Some of you turn the lights magically come on when you leave the room. In other words, some of you, when you walk in the room, you smile. And everybody knows that you want to be there, and you smile, and they can feel it. They get excited to be around you. And some people get excited when you leave the room. So be really, really mindful that especially people who are hiring, the hiring managers, the recruiters, they're looking for that. They're looking for those people who can brighten the room. And I've always heard it, find the bright spot. Right? You can look around the room and you can kind of pick them out. The people who are engaged, the people who are smiling and just, you know, when the questions come, they start asking questions. They want to know the information that you have. Otherwise, why are you there? The last thing, and I totally lost my train of thought, but when it comes to resumes, definitely come back for their resume workshop that they have later this week. I think it's tomorrow, actually, isn't it? Tomorrow? Yeah. And just, a lot of people think about resumes at this point, and a lot of you are probably seniors or grad students and think, I've heard so much stuff about resumes. They tell me so much crap, and you need more. Everything they said up here about resumes was absolutely true, except for one thing. And it's not that I wouldn't call it untrue. It's that they were looking at it from a professional standpoint instead of a recruiter standpoint. It does matter. A good resume does matter if you're applying to a high volume job. Unless you know or have connections and you've networked so well that you've gotten in front of the hiring manager without getting past a recruiter, then your resume most definitely matters. In other words, in this world, don't make your resume 2 to 3 pages long. I should be able to tell everything about you from a qualification standpoint, not about you as a person, that comes in the interview, but do you have the prerequisites, just the prerequisites, in a page or less? And you have exactly 15 seconds of my time as a recruiter, because that's all I can give. And that's pretty normal. And that's about the amount of time that you have for most hiring managers as well, from a resume standpoint. Does it matter if your resume is teal or not? No. But if you want to work for Adult Swim, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't matter. There is a fine line, though, between a really nice creative resume and too much. We had a guy submit a resume that I will affectionately refer to as the McDonald's resume. It was the same color as my shoes, but the words were yellow. I don't know what was on the resume to this day because I couldn't actually read it, but I certainly used it as an example of what not to do from that point on. So there is a too much factor. Do not ever put on your resume strong attention to detail, because if you do, I will bypass my 15-second rule and I will look. You have exactly one mistake or it's in the trash. Just because if you're going to do that, it's like painting a big target right on your resume. It's like, oh, find what's wrong with the resume. And I don't mean to be negative. I feel like a lot of what I've been saying is negative, but I want to make sure that you understand that before you get to the hiring manager in a lot of these places, there's some weirdo red jacket wearing recruiter between you and that position for a lot of these, especially in the internship side, because there's so many applicants. So just make sure you're smart and strategic with how you write that resume. Also, do have a cover letter. A lot of people will say they don't read them. A lot of people are lying. Most people will read a cover letter for a professional position. But make sure your cover letter doesn't just regurgitate your resume, and it doesn't need to be an entire page long. 3 paragraphs is good. It should show me personality, because especially if you want to be a writer, I can't tell you if you used a proper gerund or not. I'm sure that the people who are hiring you for these writing positions can. However, I can tell if your cover letter sucks. So if you want to get some of these writing positions, just make sure. A lot of people out there, you've got one thing that you've done that is a little tiny bullet point on your resume, but you are so proud and so excited of that accomplishment that you just can't wait to tell somebody in that interview. That's what you need to talk about in your cover letter, because that, when you start talking about what makes you happy, what makes you smile, if you can't talk about it without getting excited, without getting your thumperfoot going, without just big grin from ear to ear, then that's what I want to see in your cover letter, because that gives me your personality, and that says, ooh, I want to interview this person. Done. I don't even have to read your resume then. Just keep that in mind. All right, so I know I've talked around in a lot of circles today. I will keep that up. I'll keep that up in case anybody wants it. What questions does everybody have? We can talk about specific internships. We can talk about entry-level positions. We can talk about qualifications. We can talk about people who have done this before, where they are now. Give me your best shot. Yes, sir. Okay. So how can you be a more attractive applicant, and what you can do now before you graduate, since you've got 1 class left to take? First, I would ask you, what is your degree? What's your major? Okay. There's 2 things. You need to be able to showcase your work. So whatever you can do, and look, Loyola has a lot of resources just in the campus itself. I know the campus is a city school, but what I'm saying is there are a lot of resources that you can use to go through and get these experiences that you need. But from the writing angle, you need to get published if possible. Get as much of that lined up professionally as you can. You don't have to buy a $300 domain name. It's fine if you get a Wix account or something like that, but you need a website as well. The other side of what you do probably tends more to the portfolio side. So if you can get a website that showcases the portfolio and writing samples and get all these things lined up and ready to go and prepped and have multiple eyeballs look through them, then that's an excellent thing you can do. But anything you can do to get tangible work experience to put in front of somebody, that's going to help. All right? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm a junior in computer science and mathematics. I'm a double major, and I saw one of the recruitment areas was programming.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, could you tell me an example about rather what do you look for in a programming candidate for an intern, or job candidate, and or the job responsibilities in the area?
Sure. Well, full disclaimer, I'm not the recruiter for those. And my father is an engineer, but I don't speak engineer. Aside from that, when it comes to programming, this is one of those positions where you have to have the stuff on paper. So every programming software that you've ever learned ever needs to be on there, but not just like, here's my skills and I've got CX and all that. Don't just list it. Tell us what you did within your resume to really build that out. Give us examples. It is okay to expound a little bit more when it comes to that, because when it comes to something like programming, it's easy to get resumes that look exactly the same if you're not careful, right? So I would say something that would set apart, it would be your cover letter at this point in time, because you'd be shocked how many people in either engineering or programming just don't bother writing a cover letter. So that's going to speak volumes first off, because if you can write about it eloquently and explain what all you've done and say, yes, I've got experience in this kind of coding, but here's a project that I worked on, and here's the applications for this project, and here was the outcome of this project. Right, so we're looking for results in that case. So the more specific detail that you can give, the better. Even if you only have on your resume 2 previous positions that you've done, if you just bullet point the heck out of it and tell us what you did with those programs and how you've done it, the better. If there's anything that you've programmed that is specifically similar to the brand, and I mean the network brand at the time, because again, Adult Swim, very, very specific brand. I keep going back to that, but it's probably the quirkiest of all of our brands. It's same thing for programming as I would tell somebody who wants to design for them. Your portfolio is really, really important in that particular case. So you'd have to, it really needs to emulate the look of Adult Swim, not the look of Cartoon Network. So same is true of programming. Okay. We'll go back there and I'll go here and then we'll bounce around. Yes, ma'am.
Is it easier to get hired for a position if you're already living in the city that it's based in?
Doesn't have any bearing. There's only one position that I can think of that it has any bearing on. But the only reason it has any bearing is because they want you to interview in person and they won't pay airfare to come there because it just doesn't make enough for that. But none of those that I listed, do they care if you're from out of town or not?
And do you need to do in-person interviews for those types of positions, or do they just do video?
Most of the entry-level positions or internships are going to do video interview, and they aren't all pre-recorded. That's just the screening interview. Most of it from that point on is either a live video interview or a phone interview. They'll go to, sometimes we have the option, if you have, I know the Career Center probably has a room in here where they can do a streaming area. Well, we've got every conference room in our buildings have some kind of streaming capability, so we can hook it up through the same program. We use HireView, so it's easy. You could literally take an interview through your phone if you wanted to. But yeah, you don't have to be in the same place. Yes?
What is one quality in an applicant that is basically like an automatic yes so that you keep reading?
Automatic yes. Again, see that's a stacked question as well, because there's no one characteristic that is going to be sort of a blanket yes across the board. So what's your major? Ad PR, okay. Personality is huge when you talk about ad PR, depending on what side of that you're trending towards. Obviously the ad side, you're gonna be a little bit more trend to the outgoing. In PR, you wanna be a little more to the straight to the point, get to the point. But personality is gonna be a massively important piece to that. I'd say in journalism, you have to be, how do I put this? If you can't ask a question, you suck at journalism. All right, so you have to be inquisitive. You have to always want to know what the hell is going on. Why did this happen? A lot of people, when they get to about age 25 or so, they stop asking the question why. They still think it, but they don't really ask it. Journalists never stop asking the question why. One trait for someone like that wants to be in the sports world, tenacity, because there's really no hard and fast way to break into sports that is guaranteed for longer than one season. Most people who do sports will freelance for multiple years before they get into full-time job, and then they'll go freelance, 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 awesome pay. Freelancing is great. It's great while you're young, and you don't have to worry about, necessarily as much on the benefits side. That's when you freelance. But tenacity is super important. Again, all of these positions have a little bit different skill set in place, which is why, there's no hard and fast answer. Somebody, yes?
One of your slides said all majors are accepted.
Yes.
What are some more unexpected majors that have been very successful?
I get a lot of sociology majors who just knock it out of the park because they know people. I mean, it's plain and simple. Gosh, I've had a really strange one. I can't remember what it was. I've had a linguistics major who obviously was a very, very strong intern with us with CNN International for our, it's called the Affiliate Content Center. So they're effectively She was fluent in 7 languages. She didn't have a lick of journalism experience whatsoever, but she's an associate producer now, you know, down the road, because she came in and she's had all this language experience, and she could talk to all of our affiliates from all over the world. It was fantastic. But those are a couple of the strange ones. Yes.
On the DC side,
Okay.
obviously it's the political side.
Mm-hmm.
What are they looking for within the votes? And I would imagine prior experience within politics is a plus.
Yes. So if you have connections on Capitol Hill in that area, that's going to help. You know, DC is very similar to LA in the sense that it really is who you know, and it's the level of who you know in DC. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to walk into the city with connections, but it does help. You have to have a passion for politics. You can't just come in there saying, I want to do journalism, and, oh yeah, I kind of like politics, but I'm going to start in DC, because it's really an unforgiving, as we saw with this last election, ridiculous things can happen and will happen. And if you don't love it, you're gonna hate your job real fast. So a love for politics. For specifically with the CNN side, the more experience you have inside of a studio, the better. So, and I actually strike that, inside of a newsroom.
How much is experience on the Hill?
If you have an internship working for a congressman or something, perfect. It's going to make you a really good candidate. It's not going to necessarily put you in the stratosphere, because lots of people, but it's certainly going to help. Maybe over here? Yes, ma'am. When it comes to that, there's 2 divisions. One is called corporate responsibility. One is called corporate communications. I mean, pretty straightforward with that. Corporate responsibility deals with the business relationships we have from more of the nonprofit side. Corporate communications deals more on the internal communication side. There's also a few positions that would work on they're not so much sales positions, but they're planning and dealing with the underwriting side of the business. So here's a question though. What kind of position are you looking for? Do you know?
Well, currently I'm in a corporate relations
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really enjoying being able to survey the business environment
Right.
and strategize like how do we get more clients, how do we get more money. So something along that lines, maybe more sales aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely working like with a team,
Yep.
learning from like a really experienced supervisor, something that like I would be interested
Sure. Well, the interesting thing about Turner is a lot of everything in Turner is sales to a certain extent. And because the television market is changing so rapidly and so violently right now, you're going to find every individual department, no matter what it is, has their hand in that cookie jar to a certain extent. So I'm sorry I can't give you a really specific answer on that, but in this particular case, you know, with all these companies merging and all this talk of streaming softwares and things, and everything's going to smart watches and things like that, everybody has to be looking for ways to, you know, to make the next big thing. So every department is very, very much looking for, you know, how can we make our department great? What are the trending things coming on there? What is new and cool that's out there that no one else is employing into the television side? Right? How do we make television relevant when nobody has a TV? Those kind of things. So it's everywhere, but it's not in a specific department anymore. Yes, sir?
Bleacher Report side,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, nonprofit brands.
Yeah.
What is it that they look for? I remember last year I was looking at the internships. It was kind of extremely involved.
Yeah.
What would you
For Bleacher, you need to write. You need to be able to write. The more you can write about about specifics when it comes to sports. So the more you know about a specific sport, so if you ever played football or soccer or any of those, and the more detail and passion you can write with, the better with Bleacher. Because it's very, very writing heavy because it's all online based. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned how the 11-month program, you have, starts in March, the applications, it actually
Right.
starts in July. For the 2-year program, the T3, is it rolling or is it also that you have like certain times that it gets posted?
So the 2-year Studios Apprentice program does have specific times it's posted. It's typically posted the beginning of the fall, so September, and it'll start in January. So they post them in September, they start in January, and they're 2 calendar years, whereas T3 is just weird, and for some reason they run from July through the end of May is the actual job itself. Okay? I think we're going to wrap up here. So if any of you have questions, I'll be glad to stick around and answer them, just not with a microphone. And thanks for sitting in, and hopefully you got something out of it, and look forward to seeing your resumes later.